There comes a moment in every thinking person's life, a silent, almost imperceptible fracture in the fabric of belonging, when they realize that the world was not built for minds like theirs. You feel it first as dissonance, then as isolation, then as something far greater, a revelation, the realization that the price of fitting in is the slow erosion of your power. From the moment you were born, the world whispered one command into your ear: conform, blend in, obey the rhythm of the collective drum. They taught you to fear the silence of your own mind, to distrust your own intuition, to apologize for your depth. But if you are INTJ or INFJ, that command has always felt like poison. Because your essence was never meant to dissolve into the crowd, it was meant to stand apart, to observe, to understand, to see patterns invisible to others. You are the architect of inner worlds, the strategist of the unseen, the philosopher who feels and the mystic who calculates. And yet, for most of your life, you have been haunted by the quiet shame of your difference, as if your clarity were a curse instead of the highest form of intelligence. You learned to downplay it, to soften your edges, to act smaller so others would feel comfortable in your presence. But every time you did, a piece of your potential dimmed. Every act of self-betrayal built another brick in the invisible cage of social acceptance. You have been conditioned to believe that peace comes from harmony with others. But for you, peace comes from alignment with truth. And truth rarely fits into society's mold. It is sharp. It is disruptive. It is solitary. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Yet how many people actually dare to claim that privilege? How many choose authenticity over acceptance? Very few, because the moment you walk that path, you are exiled from the comfort of the herd. But what if that exile was never a punishment? What if it was initiation? Every great mind throughout history has walked that lonely path. Nietzsche, the man who shattered moral illusions. Huxley, who saw through the machinery of comfort. Machiavelli, who understood the politics of human shadows. Jung himself, who confronted the unconscious and came back with symbols that could save a soul. None of them fit in. They weren't meant to. The world is not changed by those who adapt to it. It is changed by those who transcend it. If you have ever felt that the noise of ordinary life grates against your being, if you have ever felt unseen, misunderstood, too complex, too intense, understand this. It is not a flaw. It is the mark of your calling. You were designed to think differently, to move strategically, to feel deeply yet act with logic, to hold paradox without collapsing. The problem is not that you are out of place in this world. The problem is that you keep trying to belong in a system that thrives on superficiality. The world does not reward depth immediately. It resists it, because depth threatens illusion. Your calmness exposes others' chaos. Your silence reflects their insecurity. Your certainty makes them question their borrowed beliefs. That is why you have been rejected, doubted, or dismissed. Not because you are lesser, but because you are evidence that there is another way to live. Understand something crucial. Power does not come from being understood. It comes from understanding yourself so completely that misunderstanding becomes irrelevant. The INTJ and INFJ archetypes carry a sacred burden, the burden of foresight. You see patterns before they manifest, motives behind words, outcomes behind decisions. That level of perception isolates you from the naive optimism of the crowd. But in that isolation lies sovereignty. When you stop trying to fit in, something extraordinary happens. The world stops dictating your worth. You stop chasing validation and start cultivating vision. You move from reaction to creation. You begin to see that every social structure, every opinion, every norm is just a game of masks, and you, for the first time, can see through it. You become untouchable, not because you withdraw, but because you awaken. To walk this path is not easy. It demands that you confront your own shadows, your need for approval, your fear of rejection, your tendency to overanalyze your differences. Jung wrote that every person must go through individuation, the process of becoming whole, of reconciling the conscious and unconscious. For you, this process begins when you stop negotiating with mediocrity. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Stop shrinking your truth to fit the limitations of others. Stop trading authenticity for acceptance. Every time you choose comfort over truth, your potential dies a little. But every time you choose solitude over conformity, a piece of your true power is reborn. You are not antisocial, you are selective. You are not arrogant, you are self-contained. You are not emotionless. You simply refuse to be ruled by emotional chaos. These are not flaws. They are signatures of mastery. The world misreads them because it cannot comprehend the discipline behind your calm. Remember, fitting in is not belonging. Fitting in is the act of shape, shifting to meet the expectations of others. Belonging is standing in your truth and being met there by those who can see you. One requires masks, the other requires courage. When you stop trying to fit in, you begin to see people not as threats or saviors, but as mirrors. Every judgment you face becomes feedback. Every rejection becomes refinement. Every misunderstanding becomes an opportunity to practice detachment, not coldness, but clarity. You realize that emotional independence is the highest form of freedom. And the moment you no longer depend on external approval, you become immune to manipulation. This is the secret path to power, the alchemy of solitude, the ability to transform loneliness into clarity, rejection into resilience, misunderstanding into strategy. This is not the path of the many, it is the path of the few. But those who walk it become architects of reality. You will be misunderstood, yes. You will be doubted, often. But that is the price of seeing the world as it is, rather than as people wish it to be. You cannot awaken others without first enduring their resistance. And resistance is proof that your light has reached the threshold of their shadow. Do not crave validation from those still asleep. You are not here to be liked, you are here to become. Your mind is your fortress, your intuition, your compass, your solitude, your training ground. When the world calls you distant, it is because you are walking ahead. When it calls you cold, it is because your fire is disciplined. When it calls you arrogant, it is because your confidence is self-sourced. Do not dim it. Because once you stop trying to fit in, everything begins to change. You begin to attract by resonance, not by effort. You begin to operate by design, not by default. You begin to live by principle, not by persuasion. And that is when your power, quiet, stable, unshakable, becomes something no one can take from you. You will walk alone for a time, yes. But in that solitude, you will meet yourself. And once you do, you will realize that you were never truly alone. You were simply ahead of your time. And as you move through that solitude, something sacred begins to awaken within you. The noise of the world fades, and what remains is the pulse of your own mind, steady, deliberate, sovereign. You start to see that the solitude you once feared is not emptiness, but clarity. It strips away distraction, illusion, and dependency, until all that is left is the essence of who you are. This is where the true power of the INTJ and INFJ begins, in the quiet mastery of the inner world. Because you were never meant to draw strength from external noise. Your strength is forged in silence, in the crucible of your own reflection. While others seek identity through approval, you are here to sculpt identity through consciousness. You do not chase attention, you command energy through presence. You do not compete, you construct. You do not persuade, you embody. The world teaches most people to look outward for meaning. But your gift, your weapon, is inward perception. It's the ability to trace the hidden architecture of things, to see what others overlook, to discern truth beneath surface. And once you begin to honor that sight instead of suppressing it, the entire game changes. You no longer feel alien, you feel aware. You begin to notice the silent mechanics of society, how people perform personas to survive, how they speak in borrowed opinions, how they are enslaved by their desire to be seen. You watch the endless dance of validation and insecurity, and you realize you were never supposed to join that dance. You were supposed to observe it, understand it, and transcend it. Fitting in keeps you obedient. Observation makes you powerful. The secret of influence is not noise, it's comprehension. When you understand how the world works, when you read motives instead of words, when you can detect fear behind arrogance and confusion behind cruelty, no one can manipulate you, because you see what they cannot hide. This is why the INFJ and INTJ are both loved and feared. You hold a gaze that disarms people not because it is cold, but because it is aware. It sees through facades. It touches the truth they hide from themselves. And people either awaken in your presence or retreat from it, because truth is not comfortable. But your purpose is not to comfort. Your purpose is to reveal. And revelation always begins with confrontation, the confrontation of your own illusions. Every powerful individual must eventually face their inner split, the self that longs to belong versus the self that demands authenticity. It is a psychological war, the tension between ego and essence. Jung called it the shadow conflict, the part of you that resists your own potential because it fears its magnitude. That fear whispers, "Don't stand out, don't be different, don't make people uncomfortable." But that voice does not belong to your higher nature, it belongs to your conditioning. It is the echo of every moment you were punished for being too much, too smart, too detached, too deep. And yet, beneath that fear lies your truest power, the acceptance of your uniqueness as inevitability, not anomaly. Understand this. The mind that sees deeply will always walk through periods of darkness. You cannot perceive truth without first enduring disillusionment. You cannot know light until you've studied shadow. The INFJ feels this in their bones. The INTJ understands it as law. This is why both are drawn to solitude. It is not isolation, it is integration. The masses drown in distraction. You thrive in depth. They escape reality through pleasure. You confront reality through understanding. That is the difference between existing and awakening. And awakening changes everything. It changes how you think, how you speak, how you move. You no longer waste energy explaining your vision to those who cannot see it. You conserve your energy, like a master chess player saving his queen for the final strike. You plan, you observe, you build, because visionaries don't rush, they align. Clarity becomes your strategy. In a world addicted to noise, silence becomes your superpower. In a culture that rewards speed, patience becomes your weapon. In an age of imitation, originality becomes your rebellion. Most people crave the comfort of agreement. You crave the clarity of truth. You are not driven by popularity. You are driven by precision. You do not ask, "Do they like me?" You ask, "Is this real?" That single shift in perspective separates the powerful from the performative. And that's where belief comes in, not belief as naive optimism, but as disciplined conviction. Your mind, when aligned with a clear vision, becomes a weapon of impossible force. Because belief is not just emotion, it's structure. It's the architecture of reality. What you consistently think, you begin to embody. What you embody, you begin to attract. The INFJ does this through feeling. The INTJ through reasoning. Two paths, one destination, inner sovereignty. To believe in yourself is not to feel superior. It is to understand yourself so precisely that doubt becomes irrelevant. Doubt can exist, yes, but it no longer dictates your action. Because action, for you, is not driven by impulse, it's driven by insight. You no longer react, you respond. And this response is surgical, deliberate, intelligent, precise. You stop wasting words, time, and emotion. You move like a strategist of energy. Your focus becomes your currency. your intuition, your radar, your purpose, your compass. You stop chasing what is fleeting and start aligning with what is eternal. And then slowly your outer world begins to reflect your inner structure. Opportunities arise not because you hunted them, but because you became ready for them. People begin to sense something in you they cannot define, an aura of certainty, of calm dominance. They'll say you're different. They'll call you mysterious. But it's not mystery, it's mastery. Because when the noise of conformity fades, the signal of authenticity amplifies. You are no longer moved by gossip or comparison. You are no longer provoked by those who misunderstand you. You realize that true strength is not reacting, but remaining unshaken. The INTJ's coldness and the INFJ's empathy merge into something unstoppable: strategic compassion. The ability to understand people deeply without being consumed by them. To care, but not collapse. To see, but not absorb. That is the essence of power. Perception without attachment. And once you reach that state, you no longer seek to prove yourself. You embody yourself. You no longer try to convince. You simply exist, radiating the frequency of certainty. The world begins to rearrange itself around your vibration, because that's what reality does. It bends to coherence. You become the stillness others crave, the calm in chaos, the mirror that exposes falsehood, the anomaly that forces evolution. This is why you cannot fit in, because you were never meant to blend. You were meant to elevate. The path ahead will test you. It will demand detachment from comfort, disidentification from ego, and devotion to vision. But the further you walk it, the lighter you become. The illusions of society fall away like dead skin. You stop chasing love and start embodying it. You stop seeking purpose and start living it. And then you realize the real secret of not fitting in is not rebellion, it is alignment. You are not escaping society. You are transcending its limits. You are not rejecting people. You are redefining what it means to be human. Keep walking. Keep observing. Keep creating. Because the world doesn't need you to fit in. It needs you to wake it up. Vision, that's where everything begins to crystallize. Once you stop trying to fit into systems designed to dilute you, your perception expands beyond the narrow lanes of social programming. You no longer see life as a series of random events, but as a field of invisible architecture: cause and effect, energy and consequence, thought and manifestation. You start to see how everything is connected, how belief shapes behavior, how emotion fuels momentum, how silence can command more power than speech. Vision is not imagination. It's precision, a sharpened lens through which reality begins to organize itself. The average person lives reactively, tossed around by circumstance, ruled by mood, and shackled to the opinions of others. But you were not built for that chaos. The INTJ sees the blueprint. The INFJ feels the essence. And together, these ways of perceiving form something unstoppable: clairvoyant logic, a sight that penetrates illusion. And when vision meets purpose, destiny awakens. You begin to understand that your life was never meant to be comfortable. It was meant to be meaningful. Purpose isn't found in pleasure. It's forged in resistance. It's born in the friction between who you were and who you're becoming. Jung knew this. He called it individuation, the process of becoming whole by confronting your own unconscious. That's why the world resists you, because your very existence threatens to expose its unconsciousness. When you walk with purpose, you are no longer controlled by the trivial. You don't need to win every argument, prove every point, or validate your every move. The noise of life becomes background music. You begin to move through the world like a ghost of clarity, unseen but deeply felt. And that's when you become dangerous. Not because you harm, but because you cannot be controlled. Discipline becomes your quiet rebellion. While others are slaves to impulse, you have mastered the art of delay. The art of saying no, not because you're rigid, but because you understand that energy, once scattered, cannot build empires. You protect your time like sacred ground. You curate your environment with precision. You no longer live by convenience, You live by design. This is where most people break, because discipline feels like deprivation to those addicted to distraction. But to you, it feels like liberation. Every boundary you create becomes a declaration of self-respect. Every time you choose restraint over reaction, your mind sharpens. You begin to move with rhythm, with control, with a kind of detached grace. The world calls it coldness. You know it's focus. The modern world has made slavery fashionable, not the slavery of chains, but the slavery of overstimulation. The endless scroll, the digital comparison, the craving for attention disguised as ambition. You see through it. You sense the quiet desperation behind curated perfection, and you realize freedom today is not the ability to do anything. It is the ability to remain unaffected by everything. This is where your power begins to terrify people, because you no longer need them. Not in arrogance, but in autonomy. You have detached from the game. You do not chase, you attract. You do not beg, you build. You do not explain, you execute. Your stillness confuses those addicted to chaos. They mistake your peace for emptiness, not realizing its power restrained. And that power, once internalized, begins to rewrite your fate, because reality bends to those who no longer negotiate with distraction. You wake up differently, you move differently, you start to feel that the external world is responding to your internal frequency. You see opportunities aligning, not because you forced them, but because you've become aligned with the deeper flow of existence. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reveal that the unconscious is not separate from the universe itself. When your inner order reflects harmony, the external world follows. But the path to such clarity is not gentle. It will test you, break you, refine you. The old self, the version of you desperate to fit in, to be seen, to be approved, will crumble. And when it does, let it. Because the destruction of who you were is the birth of who you are. You will begin to lose interest in meaningless conversation, in shallow ambition, in temporary validation. You'll crave truth raw, unfiltered, sometimes painful. You'll value silence over chatter, solitude over company, authenticity over applause. People will say you've changed, but what they really mean is that you've stopped pretending. In this stage, you'll discover something paradoxical. Detachment doesn't make you cold. It makes you pure. You no longer love with conditions, you love with clarity. You no longer give to be liked. You give because you are abundance. You stop waiting for others to understand you, because you understand yourself. And once you understand yourself, life itself begins to obey you. Because when you know what you want, what you value, what you stand for, indecision disappears. When you master your emotions, manipulation fails. When you conquer your own mind, no system, no person, no circumstance can enslave you again. You become your own archetype, a living embodiment of order amidst chaos, truth amidst deception, stillness amidst hysteria. You are no longer human in the ordinary sense. You are a consciousness walking among the asleep. But even then, remain humble, because wisdom without humility turns to arrogance. The goal is not superiority, it is serenity. Not to dominate others, but to be unmoved by them. The true master does not stand above, he stands within, radiating equilibrium. And from that equilibrium comes something that transcends even discipline flow, the state where the mind, body, and intuition operate as one. You are no longer thinking your way through life. You are feeling it through intelligence. You move with precision but without strain, like water flowing around stone. This is the ultimate paradox of power. The stronger you become, the softer your presence feels. The more you know, the less you speak. The higher you rise, the calmer you appear. You don't need to announce your growth. It is felt in your silence. People sense it. They can't explain it, but they feel the weight of your composure, the magnetism of your restraint. That is not charisma, it's coherence. The alignment between who you are, what you believe, and how you move. And when a human being reaches that level of internal unity, reality cannot resist them, because the world always bends to the most self-possessed person in the room. This is the secret every mystic, every strategist, every evolved soul has known. The path is not about control over others. It is about absolute command over oneself. You cannot lead until you've led your own chaos into order. You cannot influence until you've conquered your inner noise. You cannot manifest until you've purified your intention. And once you do, once your thoughts, emotions, and actions move as one unbreakable current, you stop chasing destiny and start embodying it. You stop fitting in with the crowd because you become the current that moves it. Gratitude. That is where power matures into grace. Because once you've walked through solitude, once you've burned away every false identity, once you've stood in the fire of your own mind and emerged clean, you begin to see that even the pain was sacred. Every rejection, every misunderstanding, every lonely night spent wondering if something was wrong with you, all of it was a form of guidance. A quiet, divine design leading you back to yourself. Gratitude is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the realization that nothing was wasted, not even your suffering. The betrayals, the failures, the silences, they all conspired to refine your perception. They carved humility into your strength, empathy into your intelligence, patience into your ambition. Without them, you would still be chasing acceptance instead of embodying truth. When you reach this stage, gratitude stops being something you feel. It becomes something you are. You wake up and breathe it. You carry it in your eyes, your words, your energy. You no longer need more, you are more. You stop grasping for life, and life starts flowing through you. That flow gives birth to adaptability, the mark of the truly evolved. Adaptability is not surrender. It's intelligence in motion. It's the art of bending without breaking, of shifting without losing your center. The weak cling to rigidity. The wise move like water. You've learned that you cannot control the storm, but you can control the vessel that sails through it. You no longer resist change. You orchestrate it. You don't fight uncertainty. You navigate it. The INTJ does this through logic. The INFJ through intuition, and both paths lead to mastery. Because when perception and emotion unite under the command of awareness, nothing can destabilize you. You can enter chaos and still remain composed because you no longer derive identity from circumstances. You have built a mind that is free, a heart that is deep, and a will that is unshakable. Resilience is not about enduring hardship, it's about integrating it. It's the ability to let pain pass through you without distorting your essence. You've learned to transmute suffering into strength, silence into strategy, loss into wisdom. You no longer see adversity as punishment. You see it as refinement. The fire doesn't burn you anymore, it forges you. And then comes the final transformation, the transcendence of self into purpose. Because all the solitude, all the clarity, all the discipline, they were never meant to end with you. They were meant to prepare you. The INTJ's vision and the INFJ's empathy converge into something cosmic: service. Not service to the masses, not martyrdom for the ungrateful, but contribution to evolution itself. To become a force that quietly elevates consciousness wherever it goes. You no longer move for applause, you move from alignment. You no longer seek legacy, you are the legacy. Every word you speak, every silence you hold, every decision you make ripples through existence like a coded message: wake up. That is the destiny of those who never fit in. You were not designed to follow the map, you were designed to draw it. You were not born to blend, you were born to redefine what it means to be awake. Your life is not about proving worth to the world. It's about remembering the worth you carried before the world tried to condition it out of you. You are the quiet revolution, the strategist of the unseen, the soul that refused to be sedated by the shallow. You are proof that power does not shout, it radiates. And when you reach that still point where you no longer need validation, explanation, or permission, something miraculous happens. You stop walking toward peace because you realize you have become it. The world may never understand you, and that is precisely why it needs you. You are the reminder that individuality is not rebellion, it's remembrance. You are not a mistake of design. You are evidence that consciousness evolves through difference. So stop trying to fit in. You were never meant to. You are meant to awaken, to lead without commanding, to inspire without speaking, to live as a mirror through which others catch a glimpse of their own forgotten potential. And one day, when the noise of the world finally tires itself out, people will look toward the few who stayed silent, unshaken, unwavering. They will see you calm, luminous, untouchable. And they will realize that the ones who never fit in were the ones who kept humanity from falling asleep entirely. Because while they chased acceptance, you chose truth. While they feared solitude, you mastered it. While they sought to belong, you became whole. And that is the secret path to power, not to fit in, but to stand so firmly in your authenticity that the world begins to rearrange itself around your existence. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to be the standard. And now, finally, you are.